Good morning. I pray that your Thursday was filled with spaces and places of joy, of peace, of happiness, that you found a space of time, no matter how small or how big, to laugh at yourself. Some of you saw my video yesterday where my hair was out and combed and I was laughing at myself. And so today I finally washed it, hence the towel on my head. The title of this video is Learn Your Triggers. Learn your triggers. For those of us who've been traumatized, we know a little something about triggers, things that either overtly or covertly remind us or bring us into a place of fear or whatever related to our trauma. But I want to talk about some other triggers. So with a quick story, the house I live in, which I've lived in over half my life just about, my house is 67 years old. And I've been here almost 30 years. And it's an old house, and as an old house, things need to replace, things break down. But anyway, for the time I lived here, periodically the basement, there would be water in the basement. But maybe about a year ago, 2 years ago, the water had got to the place where it was at least you could put your foot in it and be submerged up to your ankles. And so it got to the place where I would begin to fear every time it would rain. I would be afraid to go in the basement to see how much water was in my basement. And I bought this big bucket, and I would spend hours getting the water out because I didn't have one of those heavy duty vac things. I didn't buy one because I couldn't lift it. And the saga goes on. And eventually I was like, enough is enough. And I paid to have my basement waterproofed. And they did an excellent job. But guess what? I realized recently, even now with the waterproofing, I still am tentative when I go in the basement. I left out a part of the story. So after the waterproofing thing happened, that was good. And then maybe some number of months later, I came downstairs and there was water. And I was like, oh my God, they gypped me. But it wasn't the waterproofing people. My hot water heater had burst. And so add those two things in, puddles of water, got a new hot water heater. Fast forward to a couple of days ago and realizing when I go in the basement, I still come down with some trepidation, with some degree of increased anxiety. And I finally recognized I am being triggered. I don't feel safe when I come into my basement, when I first walk down those steps, because I'm not sure what I'm going to see. And once I could make the connection of what was happening, I need you to understand that I've been in the basement since then, and I have not experienced that same degree of anxiety. So there's something to be said about identifying your triggers. And remember I said some triggers may be a little harder to recognize. And I want to talk a little bit about those. You know, sometimes we are triggered by people. We get this feeling in our stomach, be it from when we interact with a past partner, a past lover, or ex, and we don't realize we're being triggered because something physiologically is being dredged up. We misread that cue, we misread that trigger as maybe we should try it again. I still have feelings for him. You know, I can't get over this. Recognize that as a trigger. Okay, recognize that as a trigger. That's a trigger that may actually be good for you, but it also has the potential of leading you down a path that you have already grown through, that you have already healed through, or that you need to grow or heal through, because the reality is that relationship was not good for you. It did not help you to grow. It did not help you to be your full self. And this is not about whose fault it is. It's about recognizing when you're being triggered. You know, like in cartoons, a little boom, 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 light will go off, red lights flashing things. That's what triggers are. It kind of identifies to our psyche, something's off, something's happening that's creating some increased anxiety for me. And yes, intense love can can equal some increased anxiety. The anxiety of, when am I going to see this person? When are we going to get together? And then your mind begins to manipulate you, and you begin to think of scenarios, and you begin to think about how you can make that thing happen, when in fact it was not a good relationship. There was a reason why it ended. There's a reason why you've moved on, and that trigger is simply a trigger. It does not mean that you need to go backwards. Sometimes we're triggered by people, and I talked about in my home for the holidays. You're doing perfectly fine, but when you see that cousin, that aunt, that grandma, that parent, something inside of you is triggered. Alarm bells are going off. This is not going to be an edifying experience. I am not going to be honored. I am potentially going to be disrespected. Pay attention to those triggers. Be able to identify physiologically what's going on with you. If your heart begins to beat a little faster, if your palms may begin to sweat, if you may begin to sweat, if you begin to feel like your breathing is becoming a little bit labored, ask yourself, am I being triggered? And what is the source of it? Am I being triggered? And what is the source of it? So I just wanted to drop by today and kind of share with you the benefit of identifying your triggers, and to do that intentionally. I pray that you all have a wonderful weekend experience. Some of you are healing. Some of you are, your anxiety's high because of loved ones who have unfortunately contracted COVID or some other disease, so your anxiety's up from that, and you may feel like that things are just spiraling out of control. But my prayer for you is that you find a space or a place of joy, of peace, of happiness, because not only do you deserve it, your overall health needs it. We cannot continue to operate in a state of high anxiety all the time. So when you feel yourself getting triggered, when you feel your heart starting to race, when you feel your breath starting to become more labored, when you feel yourself begin to perspire because of tension, because of anxiety, take a deep breath. Exhale it. Identify this moment as, I'm being triggered, and then look for the source. Love you all. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.